Hello and welcome to this Zoom broadcast of America United International, or AUI. It is Friday, February 11th, 2022, and I am your co-host, Dr. Zena Crenshaw-Logal. I anticipate that my co-host, Ms. Belinda Parker-Brown, will be joining us momentarily. Today, we will be interviewing Janice Grenadier, founder of Judicialpedia.com. And you're going to meet her in just a few moments. As of now, we have an audience here on Zoom, and I'd like to do a little housekeeping rules, even though at this point, everybody knows how to, work Zoom. Those of us who are in the Zoom audience are encouraged to use our chat section to comment on our presentation, or to communicate with our speakers. Do that as much as you like. But if you have specific questions, I encourage you to use our Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. You should see that, so that your questions get isolated. They don't get lost in the chat, and hopefully maximize the chances of us getting an answer while we're doing the live presentation. Our guest, Ms. Grenadier, has been warned that, like all of our AUI interviewees, we're going to put her to work through what AUI is calling a reverse interview. And those of you who sit in the live audience or have looked at a lot of our previous interviews on YouTube, you know how that goes. We are just like really scoring big. We have these wonderful guests, and the first thing we have them do is tell us, in usually glowing terms, what they think about America United International. I mean, who thought of this is just brilliant. Free publicity from our guests, who are all very well regarded activists. I just love it. What they do is they share their knowledge and their impressions of America United International, AUI. And that is our way of initially getting to know them before they give themselves a detailed introduction. So you've heard that Ms. Grenadier is the founder of Judicialpedia.com. That's all the details we're going to give you as starting off. She's going to come in and talk about AUI and her impressions of it. And then, as we go on, our goal is for you to learn very much about our wonderful guest and her fantastic work. So as I've explained before, this is like a quiz show meets the Masked Singer, because you don't know much about our guests, but it's also This Is Your Life, because we're going to lay it out there and get to know Ms. Grenadier and her work with Judicialpedia quite a bit. But let me first get Ms. Grenadier on the screen with me. There you go. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Janice. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our reverse interview. And I'm going to get myself off the screen. We may have a little disruption if Ms. Parker-Brown is able to join us in a few minutes. So I'm going to just get myself off the screen. In fact, here she is. Let's give her a moment to say hello to the audience. She's connecting to audio. Ms. Belinda, we have already, I've told them about this great thing we got going on, the reverse interview. I can't wait to see hear the wonderful things Ms. Grenadier is going to say about it. It's just so wonderful.
Awesome. Well, I'm here now. I didn't conquer the storm of the technology, and let's keep it moving, Dr. Z. I think you're doing a great job.
Okay, well, you see we have Ms. Grenadier on the screen with us. And we're going to step off and put it on and put the spotlight on her while she shares with our audience her description of America United International. And Ms. Grenadier, we want you to do that in as much detail as you think our audience, our live audience, and plus those who join us by looking at our subsequent video presentation. We'll have that in YouTube. Tell our viewers what you think they need to understand, what you think they need in order to understand what AUI is all about. Okay, so let us get off the screen and let you take it away. Go ahead.
Thank you, first of all, very much for having me. I feel very honored. I have known Zena for a long time. I am very impressed with the fact that they aren't looking at a very narrow avenue, narrow road. They've opened the road up to the world. And understanding what goes on in our courts is also understanding what goes on in other courts in order to protect the freedom of the people. And that's basically what we're all fighting for. We can see it in our truckers today. We can see it happening in Canada. We can see it in the Olympics. So we are a world of middle class. We are a world of people that have more power than we've realized. Because if every day we get up, we go to the grocery store, we take our kids to school, or whatever our life has in it, and we aren't targeted, we don't understand. But all of a sudden, everybody in the world is kind of
We're having a technical difficulty, Ms. Grenadier. Hold on 1 minute. Ms. Grenadier, hold on 1 minute. And we're having trouble hearing you. Okay, there you go. You're back.
I'm back. Okay.
Okay.
One of the most important things, do I need to go back a little more? Or? You're on mute.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm gonna figure this out. But you were talking about, you know, the experience of living your life, not being targeted, and then you talked about the transition that happens.
Right. So with COVID, we've had a huge transition because a lot of people have been targeted. And it might be just if you chose not to get the shot, if you had children in school that you didn't want to wear a mask, if someone in your family had to make a choice. So all of a sudden, it's like the giant waking up. It's the people waking up. And it's not just the United States. It's not just Australia. It's Canada. It's the United Kingdom. It's France. It's all across the world. And by having someone who is trained as a lawyer, as Zena is, you have someone who can look at what's happening and decipher through the different courts who has jurisdiction over what. And jurisdiction is one of the most important things you need to know in order to fight something. Because if you're unhappy with something, but you go to the wrong people in order to get justice, you're just spinning your wheels. You're like a hamster in a hamster wheel, just going round and round and round, and not really able to get the justice that you feel you deserve. Let's just take, for instance, right now where we're at in our country, and Canada and Australia and New Zealand are all speaking out about masks, about shots with COVID, and with the truckers, and more importantly, with our inflation. And that's happening to everybody. It's not just happening in the United States. And so in some ways, yes, we have to look at more of a global world and not just in our own back door, in our own backyard. But, and because we have more power that way. We have more ability to reach more people, and for more people to be able to stand up. And that's what our government is afraid of. Our government is afraid of us thinking on our own and having a voice. But it's not just our government, it's across the world. And as I had started out with, is jurisdiction. In everything we do, it has to be legal. It has to come within the boundaries. In the United States, we have a constitution. We have, every state has a constitution. Each state has their own laws, their own rules, their own codes that have to be filed. And that's where, with Zena being a lawyer, and I apologize, Belinda, I'm not sure if you are also one, so if I'm not getting that right, but it's important to know what you can do, where you can do it, and how to do it. Also, it's important to have a voice. And that's one of the things when you go to an international group like this, you get a bigger voice because there's more people involved. You also, with your group, you've taken the steps and you've done what you needed to do in order to have the United Nations as well, and different groups throughout the world participate. And that's something that is changing, because we have several people in the United States who have never really been outside their state and haven't traveled the world, as we allow more and more foreigners into our country, and more people have to have an understanding and respect for their traditions that they bring into our country. If you look back to after World War II, and I'm going to use New York as an example, and it's still this way in New York and Baltimore, you have Little Italy, you have Ireland has their own little, neighborhoods. We still have neighborhoods by tradition, by our faith, by our choices. And we're opening that door more and more, and because we're bringing more and more people from around the world into our country. And so what you're offering to bring it more to a global type situation, I think is amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, we've learned so much from you, Ms. Grenadier. Just thank you so much. Now, you talked about us knowing each other for a long time, and you talked about how the recent pandemic and issues associated with that, the economy, inflations, how they have created a broader awareness of concerns that America United International addresses. And you talked about people becoming targeted. I want you, if you could, tell us, you said we've known each other for a long time, so we certainly didn't start interacting just recently because of these developments, the pandemic and the like. So tell us a bit more about how this work relates to your life, and what brought you to, and when you talk about targeted, tell us more, our audience, more of what you're referencing.
So I am the ex-wife of the son of a judge in the city of Alexandria. And to make it even worse, my ex-mother-in-law is a divorce attorney. And it was a very powerful old boys network of Virginia. And I thought I was equal to them. But we have a two-tier system in the United States of America in the judicial system, the rich and the powerful versus the powerless. And I come under the powerless. And my ex-husband and my ex-mother-in-law come under the rich and powerful. And so I have two issues in the courts. I have one, an illegal foreclosure on my home, which was targeted through the divorce. And I was divorced in 2000. My ex-husband left way before that. And I was basically, in the end, I had $345 a month in child support for two kids. They stole everything I had. And they did it through their friendship with the judges. My whole goal, and it was a hate crime on top of that. And I am Catholic and my ex-husband was Jewish. They did a website on me that was horrid and ruined my business, ruined me in a lot of ways, broke me. And they also, I don't I think I stated this, but I don't have a property settlement. In Virginia, it's very clear. When you get divorced, you have a property settlement, especially when the amount of real estate we had. So when I was collecting $345 a month in child support, they were collecting $85,000 a month in rental income.
So let me ask you this, Ms. Grenadier. So when you talk about being targeted, in your circumstances, in your personal circumstances, you became targeted by being the wife of wealthy, powerful, of a man in a wealthy, powerful family. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And earlier you talked about people getting targeted because, for example, they push back on some type of government imposed requirements such as masks or vaccination. Is that
right?
Correct?
So yeah, so what I'm saying is basically a lot of the people who weren't targeted as I was. I mean, I was illegally jailed. I was held in solitary confinement for 14 days. I was sentenced to 30 days over illegally gotten legal fees. And you're not allowed to jail anyone over money. But today we have people being jailed for just saying the wrong thing. We have people being jailed so it makes me no different than somebody who stands up. And not only that, so in order to change the system, what happened to me, I don't want to see happen to anyone else. I created judicialpedia.com. I also became an ADA advocate, and I'm also fighting to get in front of a grand jury because
now if I can interrupt you for a minute, because we want you to tell us in detail about each of those initiatives, but I want to get some feedback from Ms. Belinda on some of the things that you have said, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Okay, first of all, you talked about my background as a lawyer, and one of the key factors in creation of America United International is that the United Nations confirmed what we've known for a long time, and that is when a person is targeted, meaning when it comes to a legal proceeding, you're disfavored in one way or another in the United States. We were able to confirm that there were ineffective avenues of redress.
Correct.
So Ms. Belinda's perspective is so important because, and she's going to speak for herself in a minute, but while she is not a lawyer, she has been engaged in challenging overreach of government for decades. And she's one of the few people that I know who can attest personally to the ineffectiveness of so much of this advocacy that people think can back off that type of abuse of power. And she's going to come on in a minute, but what do you think, Ms. Belinda, in all your years of decades of civil, constitutional, and human rights advocacy, now people who have been part of affluent families are part of the powerless. That's a change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, Dr. Z, and thank you so much, Janice. And I like what you said earlier, Dr. Z. You're just listening to her, we're learning so much, because of the fact that, she's definitely coming from a different perspective, a different angle when, because our deliberate torture, of these type of violations come from people that, abuse the people that are, of less fortunate,
Mm-hmm.
So, but now we're listening to what she's saying, and there have been cases where, we have seen them literally want to suck the life out of, people that have any type of wealth in their family, because when the fix is in, the fix is in. You got, the judge, drunk on power. You got the district attorney, the the lead district attorney, the prosecutor, the lawyer, the clerk of courts, all of them in cahoots to basically destroy your life. And they're going to do it by any means necessary.
Exactly.
And because of their connections, because of their status, or, you know, prominent, you know, some of them are, you know, prominent where they have, you know, go all the way up to the highest court in the land. You know, they're going to take care of their buddies. They're going to cover for them. And then the more you try to get things done on, you know, maybe you say, we'll go to this court, we'll go to that court, we'll file this, we'll file that, you know. But if the fix is in, there is no adequate redress because your stuff have already been red flagged, and they're going to cover or else ball your stuff up, throw it in the garbage to protect their wrongdoing. And they're not going to raise their hand and say, we got it wrong, because the fix is in. Thank you, Dr. Z.
I mean, you all just, I mean, really laying it out. I don't care how many times we have these presentations. It just amazes me, the clarity that comes in explaining this problem of what we're talking about is organized abuse of the U.S. legal system, where it's a deliberate, it's an intentional violation of rights. Some people have described it as racketeering. It's by design. It's not coincidental. You have people who have are aligned, who are cooperating with each other, and right in the mix is the presiding judge. And there's no redress. It's a weaponization of the U.S. legal system, because it is through these sham processes. You know, you have the appearance of being part of a legitimate legal proceeding, whether it's before an administrative agency or in a court of law, but there's actually a different objective. It's not about a fair and impartial administration of justice. It's about accomplishing some end, making sure that the disfavored party ends up with nothing, making sure that there's a steady supply of people to fill prisons, making sure that one corporation has power, has wealth, has advantages over individuals or other less powerful businesses. So this, hopefully everyone is understanding that this is what we're talking about. This is what Ms. Grenadier is talking about when we talk about being targeted, when we're talking about organized, deliberate abuse of the U.S. legal system. It is a crime against humanity. It is literally persecution. And for a lot of us, it's tantamount to psychological torture. Ms. Grenadier, I want to mention another thing that you talked about before you come on and tell us more about your initiatives to contend with this problem. You talked about jurisdiction. That's very important for America. That's a very important consideration for us here at America United International, because, and you talked about the need of people to understand the government and what powers it does have, and making sure that you're before the right place where they have jurisdiction to give relief, because AUI is part of an international outreach. We're reaching out to the world's community of nations, which works partly under the United Nations. We're reaching out to global human rights activists and anti-corruption advocates. We got pushback because people wanted to focus immediately on, for example, the dark side of the United Nations. But what we're forgetting is, the United Nations is not, it does not have the power to come in and make the United States do anything. No country that's a member of the United Nations, they're all independent sovereigns. They just work together in the interest of the world, in the interest of mankind. But they identify standards. They basically reach agreements that none of us should cross these lines, no matter what power we have as a nation. And part of that is called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And then they also have various agreements called treaties, where they agree to perform in certain ways with regard to the citizens of their country. So the United States has agreed to be part of this community. And more over and beyond that, when the United States adopts or ratifies one of these global agreements, it becomes part of our federal law. So this notion that somehow we're taking our dirty laundry to foreigners, outsiders, is really, putting form over substance, really, shifting the emphasis in a way, or distorting the emphasis, because these are standards that our country has been a part of establishing, have agreed to, and they're actually part of our federal law. But the question of jurisdiction, the United States agreed that when we cannot find relief in this country, the United Nations is the body that we're able to turn to with certain restrictions and say, we need your help. It's just like any other country. We see historically authoritarian nations where they're brutalizing their citizens, and they go to the United Nations and seek human rights protection, seek humanitarian aid. Well, it got to a point in this country that we had to go outside of our domestic avenues of relief and say, nothing is working. We need your help. The United States is not living up to its obligation of making sure we have effective avenues of relief. What we instead have is this runaround, this, as Ms. Belinda says, chasing of the rabbit. And I'm sure she'll elaborate on that. But at this point, Ms. Grenadier, let me bring you back in, and you can expound on some of the points Ms. Belinda and I made, or you can tell us now more about some of your initiatives, including judicialpedia.com.
Okay, so Belinda's got it 100% correct on the fact that our judges, basically breakfast, lunch, dinner, weekend getaway is what makes the decision. And having, like I said, been in a family with judges and friends as judges and whatnot, I've sat at the dinner table and I've seen cases traded. I didn't think anything at the time, because we are raised a certain way. And, I'm going to make this metaphor, and I know metaphors aren't good. They don't work well on the housewives, but basically our judges have created a situation where they're less trustworthy than the people who pick up our trash. Excuse me. Than the people that pick up our trash. The men who pick up my trash, chat with them on a regular basis because they're so kind and they'll do anything. The judges will do anything they can to harm me. And we have long.
It's some good people out there picking up trash. So
they show up. Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, their vocation and the fact that they're working with garbage it shouldn't be any reflection on their character necessarily. Just like high station in this country, my co-founder Dr. Jackson used to say, high station in this country is no indication of good character. No, it's not necessarily an indication of good character. And having humble positions such as picking up trash. Number one, they make a lot of money. And number two is no indication of poor character. But go ahead.
Right. No, and I didn't mean it in any way of poor character. If anything, I was excelling their character. We have, our rights are based on our Constitution. We're a country of laws and rules. And there are the human rights laws, but the United States never signed on to human rights. Instead, what happened was Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave us the 4 freedoms, which are freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. which basically comes under our amendments of due process, our 5th and 14th, which means we shouldn't fear walking into a courthouse. I fear walking into a courthouse. Before I go to a hearing, I create a situation that if I go to jail, just because that's what the judge wants to do that day, I have all of my ducks in a row. Nobody should have to feel that way. But I have to live in fear because they've created that type of a situation for me. What was the one thing I could sit back and I knew the judges hated more than anything? And that was disclosing them, giving people a voice and putting their stories out there, not just mine. Mm-hmm. They couldn't believe I would put the most embarrassing things they were doing to me on a blog because it made me look bad also, but it made them look worse because people knew of my integrity. Mm-hmm. So that's how I started. And I didn't want anything to happen to other people that was happening to me. And so I knew that by disclosing the stories and disclosing what they were doing and being sure people were educated and taking a step back and looking at the playing field. So with that, I created judicialpedia.com, which gives any person that has a case, that has a grievance against a judge, a lawyer, an opportunity to sign on for free. You have your own platform and you can add a case. You can add a picture, you can add links to it, Facebook, whatever. And we're at the point now, we've been up for about 1.5 years where we're going to start adding some other features to it. I did not do comments, and I didn't do comments because I want to first ensure that people feel healthy to hear what other people have to say. So many of us who have to go through all of this, there's a part of us that's broken. That you could say to me, oh my God, you look nice today. But because of where I had been and what had happened to me, I hear it totally different. I hear you saying, something negative to me. And so I only want people to feel positive, to be able to put their story out there. And then the other thing is, how do we make the change? Well, in the state of Virginia, where I'm at, where we don't vote for our judges and everything is such an old boys network, we were able to get enough cases up there that our Supreme Court justice has had to step down because of it starts at the top. It starts with the Supreme Court and it trickles down. People are unhappy with police, and I agree, but the police are doing what they're allowed to do by the judges and by the Commonwealth's attorneys. We have to clean house and make the judge is responsible for everything. If he allows people to lie, if he allows people to mistreat people, then they're going to do it. But if they're held accountable by the judge, they're not going to do it. And so you may want to target the police, you may want to target a Commonwealth attorney, you may want to target a lawyer, but it's the judge who makes the decision what's going to be allowed on the street. It's the judge who makes the decision if you're going to have to pay a bill or not. It's the judge who makes the decision if your house is going to be taken from you illegally. For instance, in my case, in my house, I have a letter notarized by Wells Fargo Bank that they had no loan on my house. They even filed it in the courthouse and the judge ignored it.
Let me you make that point so clear because I'm not sure if everyone understands that. Well, American United International evolved from a campaign, a sister campaign, Opt-in USA. And I don't know if everyone realizes that that's why Opt-in USA and America United International are considered not only human rights campaigns, but campaigns for appropriate judicial oversight. You have all the legal system includes every aspect from every branch of government from local, state, and to national, um, in this country, from the cop on the street, administrative hearings, legal processes, quasi legal processes, hearings that you may have before Social Security, all of that, the legislature, even to a certain extent, the governors involved in the legal system because they're setting priorities for the prosecutors. All of that is the legal system, and some of us experience more problems in other areas of law, other areas of the legal system more than we do when we're standing for a judge. That's one of the challenges of working with people in the wrongful conviction community or the criminal justice system reform community, because so often misconduct by law enforcement officers and prosecutorial misconduct is so blatant, whereas the judge's involvement seems to be more, they're following the lead of the prosecutor. But you make the great point, and that's all I'm emphasizing, that is up to the judge, it's up to our judiciary to make sure that there's a fair and impartial administration of justice. If any of that is going wrong, the buck is supposed to stop with our judiciary. And instead, we had these, we had this just a rash of situations where instead of stopping it, the judges were helping it happen, and nowhere was there any relief. We go to our state legislators, we go to members of Congress, we go to the governor, we go to the White House. Nowhere were we getting relief. And what we were able to show to the United Nations in 2018 is that directly or indirectly, the judges control pretty much every government process for evaluating their own conduct. So you have this branch of government. A lot of times they're not elected officials. They have, consistent with the Constitution, they make staggering decisions about our life, liberty, and property. And then when the question is, did you do it ethically? Did you follow the canons of ethics in making these decisions? You go back to the same judges. And then, okay, you go to the legislators or you go to the prosecutors, and their legislation is control, the judiciary can determine that their legislation is unconstitutional. They can strike down their legislation. So in that sense, they don't want to anger the judges. And then you got lawyers, and the prosecutor is a lawyer who are regulated in most instances by a judge. So you've got this imbalance of power. These individuals, these Americans that we call judges, control everything. And that's an imbalance of power compared to the power that we have as we the people to keep them in check. They have a much easier time taking us down than we have holding them accountable. Are you with me, Ms. Belinda? You have something you want to add?
Absolutely, Dr. Z. I'm very pleased with having Janet with us tonight in this interview, because she is really opening up a whole lot of more insight on this, unchecked judiciary when it comes to the judges just being drunk on power. And another reality to this is that, here in the parish that I live in, we had a district attorney, a lead district attorney that had been in office for over 3 decades. And what he would actually do would handpick his judges who, he had, a machine is where they call it your coffin. And your coffin is what, you got so much money in it that you can back and support and endorse, anybody that you want, to run for that position. So what he would do is handpick his judges. And then once the judges take the bench, wait a minute, I'm missing a very important part here. First of all, since he was so powerful as the district attorney, you know, the three most powerful people in your community is the district attorney that can prosecute you for anything, okay? The sheriff that can put you in jail and hold you for 72 hours and you don't have to be there and done nothing. And the coroner that can determine whether or not you dead or alive. So these three most powerful people, you know, we had them all indicted in our community. But I'm saying this is because that district attorney was so corrupt, Walter Reed, you can go and Google his name, that when he handpicked his judges, nobody else would run against them. So that's an automatic win, right? And then when the judge take the seat, he would tell the judge, don't you remember, I mean, don't you ever forget where your bread and butter came from. So he literally controlled the judges to do whatever he wanted them to do on that bench. So there you go. When I say the fix, and they're all in cahoots and working together. If Walter Reed walk in the courtroom and sat on the front row, and he done already told the judge that this person is going down, you better believe they're going down.
No, that's 100% correct. And that's what I was saying, you know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, weekend getaway, sex, a lot of different things by your judge.
Don't forget about the golf course.
And the golf course, right? A bet on a game going one way or another. And so, you know,
Miss Grenadier, let me interrupt you. So to what extent is, as you say, exposing this behavior a check on the corruption, and what are the limits on just simply, for example, uploading someone uploading their experience to a website or a blog or on Facebook? Well,
so my recommendation is to upload any cases or criticisms, complaints against judges on Judicialpedia, but not just upload your case, because you're not the only one that's having that issue. And what we have so much is people think, oh, my situation is a divorce, my situation is a foreclosure, my situation is a guardianship, CPS, all these different things. And so people have the tendency to feel like what happened to them is worse than what happened to anybody else. And their story is going to make the difference. First, people have to realize they're not alone. And their story is not the worst. That there are plenty of people out there that have it a lot worse. But you need to upload 4 or 5 cases about that judge. That's how we got our Supreme Court justice to have to step down here in Virginia, is because of the cases that are up there and the ethics cases that we filed in the courts against them. So you have so few avenues, and you have to look at what they are. And in my opinion, one of the biggest avenues we have is the grand jury. And the grand jury was hijacked from us back in the 60s and 70s. Once the government realized the power of the grand jury. Now, you'll see a lot of people going online and doing these people's grand juries, doing the sovereign citizen stuff. You don't want to do that. We have a legal system that allows us to go in front of the grand jury and to present public corruption and ask for a special grand jury. And no matter what your feelings on Donald Trump, the best example of this is the Mueller report, the Mueller grand jury, where we spent $40 million to find out there was no Russian hoax. It was all made up. But that's a good example of how they got the subpoenas for all of the people surrounding Donald Trump. Well, you get to do that. You get to go to the grand jury, no different than a Commonwealth attorney, no different than an attorney. each state has their own rules. Some states even stated in their constitution that you have the right to do it. And so but you also have to know what you're doing. If you're going to go pro se into the courtroom or pro se into a grand jury, you have to be prepared with the documents. You have to be prepared with your indictment. You have to be prepared with your order for the judge and with your what you want. Mm-hmm. And that could be a special grand jury, or it could be an indictment on someone. The special grand jury gives you the opportunity to subpoena documents, to bring people in and have them testify in front of the grand jury with what they know. So it's a very powerful tool. Mm-hmm. And our government has stolen it from us, and we've rolled over like a bunch of sheep and let them. Yes, and that's one of the things we have to take back.
Exactly.
The other thing is becoming an ADA advocate. Nobody should be in court without an ADA advocate. The ADA switched up the rules with the ADAA, and legal abuse syndrome was coined by Karen Huffner, and I would be shocked if Zena didn't know who I was talking about. I don't know Belinda, but she was in Florida. She worked really hard at being able to expose how the courts create PTSD in pro se litigants and in litigants who are harmed by the way the courts do. And the good thing about an ADA advocate, we get to go in there and state the judge is wrong. I've been able to get cases turned over and dismissed because of the Brady laws, because of different things, or just the appearance of the bias. So we do have a few avenues, but we got to use them.
I think, I think that the pivotal factor, and you tell me what you think, Ms. Grenadier, because I've been doing this full time since 1998, and we have a marvelous legal system. It's the world gold standard for a fair and impartial administration of justice. What we were able to establish with the United Nations is that gaps have been honed into our legal system. Holes have been tinkered with, such that our legal system is wonderful if the judiciary, the powers that be, want it to be. In other words, it can be selectively enforced. Everything that you're describing will work wonderfully unless there's been a determination that it won't work. And that is the problem. And our constituents are the people for whom it has not worked. And there are quite a few of them. I can introduce you to an expert on grand jury process who, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure what the status of his case is, but he was criminally prosecuted for attempting to present to a grand jury. I'm personally aware of ADAs who were prevented from providing fair, reasonable advocacy for their clients. So again, it works until they don't want it to work. The powers that be, the people who have the ability to abuse legal process and get away with it. That's what America United International is about. Do you want to elaborate on that point, Ms. Belinda?
Absolutely, Dr. Z. I see, I'm following some of the responses that people are saying, file a class action lawsuit against the corruption. Who we gonna file it to? The fox guarding the hen house? What we're saying is when the fix is in, You know, all of these things that Janice is doing is good. You know, keep doing those things. But without AUI saying that time out, cold blue, we can't wait. It's taking too long.
You're right.
You know, so we may win some and we may not. And who is going to win?
Exactly.
It's not me. You know, Britney Spears may win, but not me. Not the majority of the people that I know. Well, you know, so Janice, did you win?
Winning looks different every day. I'm still in my house 5 years after a foreclosure.
So you're fighting. You're still fighting. Okay.
I am still fighting, and I am not going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, though, needs to get a little backbone, and they need to expose their cases. Too many people.
Well, can I respond to that? Stop right there, because you said early, you know, so many few avenues, but we have to use them. But I'm telling you, we got to be real serious that everybody can't fight like you. And the problem with that is that, what about everybody else? You just said you don't want to see this happen to no one else.
Right. And one of the biggest disappointments in our system is that when people are found innocent, it takes them 10 years still to get out of jail.
Wow.
That the government still covers up and continues to cover up. There's a gentleman that reached out to me with his group from LinkedIn. His name is Zimmerman. He's up in New York City. He sent me all of his evidence, and he appears to be innocent, but yet he had a alibi, but he's 15 years longer, even if he had been guilty of what he did, still in jail.
Very good point, Janice. Very good point.
And here again, we go back to our judges. If they get the information someone's innocent, that person should be out the next day. Mm-hmm. But they don't do that. Mm-hmm. They continue to leave them in there. Right. They fight and they fight and they fight and they fight harder and harder and harder the more you stand up for your rights and the more you stand up for what you think is right. And now we have a swelling. Mm-hmm. We have the school board members, parents have been put on notice that the government is investigating them if you are standing up for your child. We have the truckers. We have a swelling right now, a very unique situation that we need to. So on Judicialpedia, for instance, we have cases for Cuban people who are jailed for standing up and speaking out. There's, I think there were some Chinese cases up there. I'm not sure if they're still up there, though. I was looking from the other day. We've got cases that are, divorce, that are alienations for parents, guardianships like the Britney Spears and everything. But the more cases you have up on one site as a clearinghouse, the more you can attack, because you're not going in there and you're not saying, oh, judge, you're doing this to me. You're being able to say, judge, you're doing this to 5 people in this community.
Exactly. And let me tell you what happened, Dr. Z.
Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I just want to say this. My judge was caught taking a bribe of $40,000. Yeah, he was caught taking a bribe. I'm not going to put the price tag on. And guess what? He committed suicide. He killed himself because he was not going to admit that he had went along with the conspiracy to put my husband in jail for 40 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So he rather had, before he admitted the truth, he killed himself.
Somebody may have helped that process along. Involuntary suicide happens. But, what I want to also emphasize, because this is an aspect of America United International. If we started off where we were talking about the obstacles that people encountered in trying to get justice. And one of our slogans is, a long time ago, we stopped considering this due process. So I don't want to suggest for anyone to go away from this presentation today and think that the message is not keep fighting, that the message is you absolutely need to know the law, you need to be well prepared. All of that is absolutely true. But I've been doing this full time since 1998. Decades of doing these things, that's not due process. That is not effective avenues of redress. We're absolutely delighted that there's a groundswell. That's because our ranks are increasing. But we should not have to wait decades. We should not have to flood the streets with hundreds of thousands of people. And doing those things are easier said than done when on the front lines of this fight are people who have been literally persecuted, tortured, robbed of all of their stability, their credibility in the community. That is not an effective avenue of redress. The international it's an international body of jurists, actually, ironically, judges. And they have a definition of ineffective avenues of redress. And it's not that, the definition is not that no one wins. I could quote the actual definition if I had it handy, but it basically comes down to, is ineffective if it takes too long. It is ineffective if it costs too much. It's ineffective if the wins are too seldom. It's ineffective if the decision makers are not fair and impartial. Just because, okay, Judge McGillicuddy, they really got you cold here. They got 5 blatant cases of your misconduct. So we want you to go ahead and retire with your pension and step down. We're not going to defend you. That is not a fair and impartial resolution of the problem. It's ineffective if the people who were the source of this deliberate violation of rights are not held accountable, who are not appropriately sanctioned. It's ineffective that after you have endured all of this, you are not made whole. You are not compensated. You do not receive reparations. Reparations, that is like a taboo term, but the United Nations anticipates that any people who are the victims of failed government, a failure of government to do their job, to appropriately protect them for this type of abuse of power, are entitled to reparation. So we just want to make clear that we're not pushing back on any of your input, Janice, and we're going to be wrapping up now and let you have about a minute to convey some final sentiments. But the fight, yes, keep up the fight, but the fight itself is not effective redress. That's effective advocacy. Go ahead, Ms. Grenadier. Give us about a minute or so before we wrap up.
Always have grace.
Yes.
Always be grateful to God for giving you the strength to get through it, because without him, none of us would have gotten through it. It's through the grace of God that I created judicialpedia.com. It's through the grace of God I've walked this path and been given the strength and the knowledge. 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I do documents, and I'll read them at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, how did I do that? But it's through the grace of God that I've been able to do this. And I hope that people take away from this, that they can add their case and I can give them a voice, because having a voice and being able to connect with others. And take my word for it, 30 years ago, a friend of mine who lived in Atlanta came to me and she said, Janice, you're not going to believe what's happening to me in the courts. And I thought, oh, you're always a little on the crazy side. I was married to somebody who in the judicial family, and I thought there was nothing a judge could do wrong. I was wrong, and I had to call and apologize. Be open-minded, listen to people, and don't judge so quickly that you automatically find them guilty when they could be extremely innocent and be targeted. Exactly. Look for solutions. Look for ways to find the solution. Try to look at your end game and how can you get there.
We're gonna let me finish with our little commercial closure, and then we're going to stay on the line but stop recording for a minute or two because I want to address a couple of the questions that were posted. So if our audience don't mind staying over a minute or two, we'll stop recording and address these questions. But I want everyone to please go to www.americaunitedinternational.net, just as you expected they would be spelled, all lowercase, americaunitedinternational.net, to learn more about the campaign and join our efforts. Donate so we can sustain this work. Even small contributions go far when many people contribute. AUI is you, Y-O-U. It's our solution and it's our job to sustain the campaign. None of us cause organized abuse of the U.S. legal system, but working together, we certainly can solve that problem. We appreciate Ms. Grenadier and her fabulous contribution to the solution, judicialpedia.com, and then also her personal work as a ADA advocate. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk with her at some later point and learn more about those options. Thank you all for participating, and be safe, keep the faith, and we'll be on the air again. Ms. Belinda, do you want to give us some closing comments and then we'll wrap up for this evening?
Yes, Dr. Z, I just want to thank our guests once more. Thank you so much, Janice. This has been very good. And I would like to thank everyone that would join up with us and support this great work. AUI is a cold blue. It's a red button push. It's saying time out. We can't wait. We need a FEMA. Thank you.